Welcome. In this video, we're going to talk about flexible grids. Now, the grids are usually a static number of columns. So we have seen this before. We have a little grid here. We have one child in it, and we can configure them with multiple columns like this, and it equally distributes them. And this is a very common case. In that case, we have three static columns, but sometimes we want dynamic number of columns based on the column widths, whatever the content may be. So how do we do that? So in order to do that, let's first we have to show the repeat function. So the repeat function can be used for static case as well. So in this case, for example, I can come here and I can say repeat, and I can pick 3, for example. And yeah, it's the same thing as what we had before, 3 times repeating it. You can see if I keep adding it, it will basically put them in 3-column format. So that's still static. That's still static. So let's try to talk about how can we do dynamic number of columns. The simple case for that is if we actually make the column width static, and then we can determine the number of columns based on that. So let's talk about that first, and that's relatively easy to do. First, we have to actually set a particular width to the column over here. So let's set it for, I don't know, something like 300 pixels. And then after that, we need to set something called autofit. So what this does is it's basically setting the dynamic number of columns as long as the column width is 300 pixels. So I can add them over here. When it goes beyond that, it dynamically determined the number of columns. And if I reduce it, it will also change the number of columns based on the minimum width. So that's another option. But now there are some cases where we don't exactly have static width for our columns. So how do we do that? So let's just delete these extra columns. And in this case, we specified auto fit. So the way that this is accomplished is through something called min-max. So the min-max is very, very powerful. So what this does is we're saying we want the columns to be auto fit, but and there will be a minimum value. And then the question is, how do we distribute the remaining amount? So there are two choices in this case. One of them is to let's say we fit 200 pixels for the minimum content. So I'm just going to say 200 pixels over here. And as far as the maximum content, typically this is set as 1 fraction unit. So what that means is when we set it to 1 fraction unit, what we're saying is I want all the columns to take 200 pixels, and then the remaining space, I want them to be automatically distributed between the blocks. So if I keep adding here, you can see it's distributing the space equally between the blocks up until the point when they reach a minimum of 200 pixels. In that case, it adds it to the next row. So that is one option. So that's the auto fit dynamic width option. The other option is the autofill. So that's a little bit different because what the autofill does is it tries to fill as many number of columns first as possible and then places the children in them. So it doesn't try to distribute the width equally among the children. So then if we keep adding this, you can see it's just their width is still like 200 pixels or maybe a little bit more than 200 pixels to equally distribute it. But yeah, I mean it's not equally distributed like the autofill. uh, even though they look similar, as you can see here, like they're this is not distributing the space, but then the auto fit would be distributing the space. So that's the difference between autofill and autofit. And this is a very famous code. It's known as the most famous code in Grid. All right, that's about it. Thank you very much for watching.